Hey, it is your buddy, Peace and Harmony, with you here today. Much love going out to all the beautiful, empowered harmonizers. We are zooming in and focusing in on a great viewer question that came in actually through email. I do read the comments. I'm getting kind of overloaded right now. I do read your comments. I can't always respond to everything, but I do absorb them heart and soul. So know that I'm here with you on our discussions, in real time. So getting back into it, as you know, I was out for some time. I had just some nerve pain, nerve issues. I had an abdominal wall pain. I mean, too much to go into right now. But let me tell you what, I am on the road to health. I am on the road to healing. And I'm like feeling better than ever than I have in a long time. Basically living pain-free from like nerve conditions. And you all have been with me for many years. You've seen me grow through a lot of different stages. And also, I've been absent in some. That's usually because, well, like Ashton Kutcher, they just announced, has a rare autoimmune condition. So those autoimmune diseases like that, are kind of really in that sort of quaky area where you can't really tell if it's like your stomach or your heart or your lungs, or is it your spine. So there's all these like autoimmune diseases which we're hearing about, and a lot of different things are sort of cropping up in sort of everyday media in the news, other than really what we used to hear about. I mean, things are really becoming amplified right now. And so when we talk about like when I've been on the road to health, it's really becoming a little bit more severed from a lot of that, and sort of tuning into my own needs, which have come to me first physically. So your physical body will always get your attention first. And getting into what we're going to talk about right now, which of course is your inner journey. What could be more profound than that to cover here in a quick few minutes? Um, um, Basically, but for health, and we're kind of talking about at news, I'm really feeling better than ever, sort of more balanced. I had a lot of nerve issues where one half of my body was totally numb, the other, and I really, deep. So these are hard to diagnose, but these sort of, what I'm talking about here is that I've been absent for some time, and that's why. So if you ever wonder, I do get, emails, where are you? And I haven't ditched you guys. As you know, I also broke my wrist. I had a cast on earlier this year. I've been through all sorts of different things which required my attention. But, know that just like in the news now, we're talking about how what is in the news now. And sort of, I want to kind of tune this into your own feelings and your inner journey. Because now, now with the age of information and algorithms and getting your attention, and what flashes, and in these very small little bits. So even just like a jet of water coming out of like a speedboat, dad and girl riding in a speedboat over the water with like their little life jackets on, and like he's steering but she's right there, or whatever, or they're on and it catches your eye, and then you have to click away. All these, like, our attention is being really diverted nowadays. So it can really be very difficult to make your way sort of like knowing up the headwinds if you're headed in the right direction, especially if you've kind of come through a history of relationship with narcissist abuse, child abuse, any of those sort of emotional, sort of, really deep, cavernous sort of states that most people don't get to or don't live by on a day-to-day. Like, some people are philosophers, thinkers, great writers: Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, Buddha, Jesus, Muhammad. I mean, there's all Baha'i, there's all these like great rulers, like people who have risen up above all others, who we look to. And now that's sort of being turned around and flip-flopped onto it within yourself, and then to be reflected back. Like the state of our news media right now, and like how we access and get our news and information, access to healthcare. You see these advertisements, for medication. Now it's this better help therapy. all these different things are emerging right under our fingernails, and it's getting kind of gross. It's getting kind of dirty. It's getting kind of nasty. It's getting kind of yucky. A lot of people, we're going through a lot of yuck right now. If we can just keep it at that would be fantastic for a moment. Like, this is a new skill I feel we need to learn in this new age, this new era, this coming of times, whatever in our lifetime, which we are in right now. So we can really say, so in our lifetime, we've experienced a pandemic. In my lifetime, I've experienced health issues at what I would consider a relatively early age, and encounters with other, forces and things that needed to be heralded and hearkened at an early age. In other words, being young, older, sort of emotional navigation waters needed to be navigated in certain ways, beyond, and then other people had other, and so there was this sort of other and me, or what people experience oftentimes, when they grow up. And then how does that reflect sort of in your inner journey and like being happy, especially after a very hurtful, sort of gnawing at you relationship that just doesn't sit with you. It cannot sit right. And you feel you're on the receiving end, that you're not doing anything to call it forth, bring it in, and you're left with all of a sudden needing to gather a new skill in the midst of this force, like that is trying to threaten you basically off course, or just basically would be pleased with your non-existence, is kind of really the existential experience that people sometimes experience early on in life. And sometimes childhood, you're thought, oh, it's supposed to be filled with innocence and pleasure, and the ABCs, 1, 2, 3s, and you're skipping through the tulips, and you're playing on the seesaw or whatever, getting splinters in your leg, getting your knee bashed up, who cares? I bashed my knee the other day. I've literally fallen, and that's a couple days healed, 3 times. It's just a whole issue. Uneven sidewalks, whatever. All sorts of different things. Those are really the cause. And ice is the cause of my broken bones. But ice is, these are things in our environment that we will have to learn and navigate. These are forces. So sometimes people come into contact with forces that they feel ill-equipped or sort of prematurely not required to be called forth at that time. Sort of, in other words, to be faced with certain pressures before there were skills to be acquired for navigating that in a seamless way, for it to sort of go according to plan, what you might think a plan. So a lot of people feel that their lives don't have a plan, or haven't gone according to a plan, and that other people have a life that's like going according to plan, and they feel envious, covetous, or sort of severed, or disgusted by that, or unable to sort of be around certain things. Like they just, so there's, but at an early age, so in other words, after there's an emotional growth that occurs with the human experience. And oftentimes that, with self-preservation and safety, security, i.e. happiness, or what would you consider the American dream? Is it, really is the American dream sipping all sorts of different fancy lemonades on a raft somewhere? Is, so there's all these sort of images of what should be, and really what is, or within, or wanted, or desired, or thought to be important, or really of value, I think, is right in the core, which is right behind, behind your belly button. Your I am is, your core. And so oftentimes, if you're in a relationship with someone who is narcissistic, they're wanting to have a lot of sort of displaced negative energy in their energy field, meaning, so kind of comparing it to what's going on right now and the narcissist, the challenge with those sort of hurtful relationships is because it gets us to a place where we're not equipped to be faced with as of yet. For example, if you're caught in a tsunami with 35-mile-an-hour winds, you're at a beach and a tsunami hits and you're not knowing, you would be ill-equipped to handle that. So you would feel ill-prepared, therefore you would be taken askance, you would be taken under. That would be a threatening situation. So, but there's also an emotional volatility that we call, that comes with people, or an emotional serenity, or if anywhere there in between. And we talk about hurtful or harmful destructive relationships and sort of bouncing back from that. I think really you have to get to the root or the source of it to sort of get to that gnawing place and put some air into it, breath movement, some flow, some movement, because it's those places that really, that's the occurrence state, which is where you kind of get into an understanding or a knowing, and then therefore like a release, and then what you might consider a more level plateau of what you would consider happiness, growth, or evolution, which just you feel like you're being satisfied. You don't have a lot of conflict or combativeness in your life. When you're faced with a narcissist, you're faced with a lot of combativeness. You're faced with a lot of incongruence. You're faced with a lot of perilous moments that can be wrought with, am I going to make it? I'm out here. Nobody knows, and I'm going to learn to suck it up and enjoy it. And sort of being like left out in the ice, left out in the cold, left out in the dark. But more so the problem that we're, and this is to a viewer question, which is very common, which is kind of how do I get back to happiness like right away? Like there's a fix. So, I mean, in other words, so how can I get like some rapid relief after, especially what can be a long-term, ongoing, sort of hurtful, harmful series of relationship moments or reoccurrence, therefore the story, the scary of your life, and is to be sort of in that external validation of that chaos. So in other words, living on the edge, living in the unknown. I don't have a plan. This isn't going anywhere. This definitely ended up in the you-know-whatter. This definitely ended up in the, I wish it was the garbage, but I have to make it into compost and grow the life of the fabric of my life from it now, sort of like, so that ill-equipped, feeling, I think is one of the problematic states. So with people, you have like states, you have like how you feel, and then, kind of your repertoire, which is, if you do it, enough, it becomes sort of your identity. But see, this is malleable and plausible, just like Dr. Joe Dispenza. He talks about in the habit of breaking the habit of being myself. Basically, it's to get in, realize that there's part of you to acknowledge, honor, and validate, which is really beyond our comprehension, which is sort of just this vastness of life. Which oftentimes is this vastness, or it doesn't have to be defined a B state of life, like what you might consider your natural state. For a lot of people, the natural state is not their natural state. In other words, what is your natural state? Like when it comes to, everything is sort of coming out rapid fire right now. And a lot of people are feeling wounded, at a loss. Am I being represented? Am I going to make it? Am I going to eat? We see all these images flash, and then especially those like really quick, all these images that are flashed at you, tens of hundreds of thousands in a day, if you're online enough. If you are online and surfing, okay, surfing is not a sport. It's not something there's an American medal at, okay? We are not going to the U.S. Olympics to be like, yeah, I'm the greatest, surfer of Amazon, and that makes me superior, man. I mean, so in other words, people, how are we being graded right now as a society, as an individual, as a human being, and where we're going is kind of the precipice where I'm talking about. So people, I think, who come to the channel, they've been on the precipice of this sort of really part of this piece, maybe 1/3 of it, that is formidable, meaning you are one to form, formidable. So do I have a form? Formidable years, which you're basically first exposed on life, basically to human contact, i.e. your parents. So, and what was then, basically built in, and what you sort of took in, especially those really quick flash moments, you might have had as a youngster, a toddler, if you were abused as a toddler, or, but even getting older, or from a sibling or a parent, or at school, you might have been too young to handle. You might have been ill-equipped. You might have been, in that pre-mold state. In other words, you're in that amoeba. You're in that vast state, okay? Abuse shrinks it and collapses it down. It's just like the energy just sort of gets you sort of sucked into the requirements. So you become basically the product of what the needs are becoming of this required individual set of circumstances. So if it's sort of in the bell curve, like in the middle, it might be sort of more normal, more predictable. There's focus, there's this discipline, and there's this maybe a balance of external validation and internal validation that's taught. So when you're in the formidable state, and how does this loop around to those people who need some relief, they want to get happy, it's to realize that there's a depth. Cheryl talks about it, Cheryl Crow, the first cut is the deepest. I don't know what that means. I hope that talks about fruit or something else, but maybe it's emotional. We don't want to use that, but maybe some people's hurt does not feel like that, like Cheryl Crow that she sings about. Maybe your hurt is different, but your hurt might be as deep as Cheryl Crow or George Washington or Abraham Lincoln or Muhammad Ali. I mean, your strength, Mr. T, your strength might be so strong, but you might have come up from something, meaning, coming around from something, like, whoa, you're on a reactive plateau, and everyone else is like, they're sort of on sort of more a different driver's seat. They're on like autopilot. Their lives are going like according to plan, and your life is different. That is okay. That is scary. But especially now in the information age, it's easy to get wounded, distracted, thrown off course with the requirements. If you don't back it off, if you don't pump off the brakes, emotional brakes, if you don't calm it down, because it will have a lot of requirements. It'll require you to drink a lot of coffee, stay up a lot of late nights, get rings under your eyes, cause you to doubt yourself, get sick, gain weight. That's when you're young. It gets difficult when you get older. They always tell you that. Why do all of my college professors always say, when you get older, this is all that you've prepared for. Be prepared for it. It hurts. They always throw out these and you always think, never me. I'm not, and then it hits you early, and then you feel a double whammy, like you're ill-prepared, you're ill-fated, you're falling backwards. People don't know which direction, and when you're coming, especially from a hurtful relationship, usually if we look at the distinguishing factors, in a hurtful relationship, there's sort of this annihilation of boundaries, which means there is a no owning of oneself. You are owned by captive of the environment. You are kind of a sort of byproduct benefactor, a recipient. All that's going around, you're just soaking it up, and it's just so in the formidable years. If that is balanced out between you have control over yourself, or you're shown how to navigate the waters, you're 12 and your dad is taking you to canoe, or you're learning to canoe. I mean, either both, or like on a bike. This is like on a parallel to your emotional ability to handle and weather things that come your way, whatever it is, a job, a relationship, these sort of situations that are factors, but that can take away, rob you, deplete you, or sort of separate you from your happiness. Meaning, you feel separate from that which is your happiness. You feel separate from that which you love. You want to just be in bask in. You feel that you can't, or you don't have that right now, that you're somehow displaced from, or not deserved of that. And then your behaviors and actions then prove that. And in a relationship with a narcissist, which can be hurtful, is because oftentimes there's an annihilation of boundaries with their needs and requirements that besit, and yours are a default to theirs. Meaning you're these sort of default to. If we can understand a certain mechanism that I think takes place, that people who are in hurtful relationships, they don't quite learn how to navigate, they don't quite learn how to get on the emotional gas pedal, quite the right balance. They can't pump the emotional brakes sort of in a cush, Arsenio Hall kind of way, how do you handle it? How do you move? How do you learn? And how would you like to be cultured and cultivated to be, and sort of be at that driving helm, meaning you're sort of feeling you're driving and leading your life, versus sort of being a passenger carried or sort of engulfed in, and the recipient of, or a non-participant, or to use today's sort of influencer of the you're not able to influence. There's this overwhelm. So people then create this unhappiness, then, which is built on this annihilation of your needs, and then sort of being sequestered, so being sort of swept away, meaning literally feeling swept away, and feeling that you're just sort of riding the current of, as sort of helpless, and really not being heard, seen, need, or met. And so you can't really kind of get into focus. You can't get other people into focus. It feels unsafe if you did not receive that early in a formidable year. So form equals function. So if you were formed in a certain way, you might then be more wanting or more predispositioned to experience, not to be owned by, and not to be said that you are and then your identity is as it's defined by them, because you're not defined by that, what we call external validation. In psychology, there's internal validation. I know I am. A competency, fill it in, X. I know I am. Okay, to a certain degree, that is experienced is a lesser. It's a very small percentage, perhaps a 1%er, to the 99% then that the narcissist requires when you are in their environment. So in early formative years, if you're sort of taught to be in that slim margin and only participate or experience the life in a certain way that didn't give you a feeling of leverage and that balance of being able to navigate, things, a bully, what happened. So this is sort of ongoing. You know this in your own life. So how did you handle this early on, and how do you handle it now? Was someone there, or was someone not there? Oftentimes people who I feel who are predispositioned to want to, who have experienced this, have oftentimes sort of a soft spot within them for that experience, and they continue to sort of nurture, attract, be defined by, and their I am, their entire book, their entire feeling and repertoire is that. And it's very important to learn, what does it mean to not be owned or possessed by that, and to what degree is that okay? Okay, and the changes are happening fast, and the decisions to that understanding are really becoming more imperative, especially if you've been in that sort of, emotional bystander, emotional whiplash, taken in the gut, chin, in the gut, upside the face, in the ear, behind the throat, behind the knees, skin your booty, skin your knees, wherever else you got to skin, you're skinned up, beaten up emotionally. I mean, your teeth, you better even show, you might even have a broken tooth or so. People grind their teeth when they're stressed. Stress to that negative degree, that there's that negative sort of throwing the net, being scraped up by, owned by, possessed, being detailed and sort of tweaked by, sort of like, you tell me how to tweak my dress. You tell me how to tweak my smile. You tell me, versus me being okay with, and this is okay with where I'm at, and this is a balanced, healthy, meaning I'm in a feeling field, not in a combative field, which is oftentimes invoked and instrumental in what we call a narcissist, either upbringing or relationship with someone who is very heavy on the sort of requirement for them to be in control and have power. So male or female, kid, doesn't matter, grandparent, they're going to, there is a spectrum of people, and people, I love people. People are amazing. They come in all flavors, shapes, and sizes, tints, and skin tone, and heights, and whatever. But what I'm talking about in your personal, like, feeling, how do I get to a state of happiness, and to what degree am I done, or feeling done with this woundedness, or to what degree can I bring on happiness, and then just have that as an all the time I am, was to realize first the depletion or the scraping or removal of this oftentimes is given when you are sort of in that, so I would call it sort of a magnetic quandary or quantum requirement. So in other words, your caregivers, the people who keep the food coming, the people who keep the roof coming, who keep whatever it is on the news coming. I mean, that's like, then you have a vision, and how you're treated is oftentimes and you do what is required, oftentimes requires you to sacrifice or repress or and then become a little bit oppressed or oppressive if you're reacting to their requirements. In other words, you are required and to do and maybe exceed growth in certain areas, but when everything is looking okay in the long run. So in other words, there could be like a deep cut. Sheryl Crow talks about that. Something that really keep sort of a mile marker in your life, if you will, and to what degree can you allow it to fade off in the distance and then allow you to experience happiness? In other words, to what degree can the grains, of the sand just be sustainable and be directed? I think there's a certain requirement that understands that the removal or the hurt comes in the disrespect or the denial or the invalidation of your I am, your existence, and your requirements needs for what I call boundaries and standards. So boundaries, which means this is your personal space, this is yours, and you're safe and okay here, and we're going to make sure, that's, I guess, what kids, you don't throw kids every day to the alligators and ask them to come back with like an alligator tooth necklace. I mean, you grow them up, but you raise them up, but to what degree is there an annihilation of boundaries where the child is not even allowed, or even as it matures into an adult, is it allowed to have an I am that is in its strength? Because the strength oftentimes is what is required out of you to be there, or to be in a coexistence in a relationship with someone who has a very powerful personality. They have an insatiable need for power and control, so they have a very powerful, commanding personality. want to take charge. It's my way. I got my hands on this. I'm working this. And so they're kind of like they're kind of like there's flour spitting out everywhere, but they're just going to pave a path, and they're just going to be the power hitters. They're going to be your home runners, your 4-score, 11th inning, whatever. They're going to be, sometimes they've got a propulsion. They've got like a propulsion to them, which means it's just a seemingly endless requirement to have a control. So there comes the good with the bad. And sometimes if you're in a narcissist or an abusive relationship, there is this sort of disrespect of boundaries. And oftentimes this occurs when you don't know what boundaries are or what is required of a boundary, or what is an emotional boundary and why wasn't it set up. I mean, in other words, why is there no fly hook on the door? Why does this door swing back and forth? Why is my door out of Velcro? Why is my car in duct tape? Why am I like pumping up, or like a tire because I can't afford to get tires, so I have to pump up all my tires anytime I drive because there's a slow leak in all of them, and they're probably going to pop, but I've only got these for the next 2 months. Just these certain situations that are not safe to be in, but they are apparently self-brought on because of one can't self-sustain or sort of find a way of self-being which is acceptable and then required, or really acceptable, meaning what is given as approval from another. So you're okay, just sort of that experience. If you're in a relationship with a narcissist, you are not going to receive that validation. They will make sure that it's sucked up. They'll make sure that it is not given. They won't go there, and that's okay. They can be very extreme in their nature, and this is a real prohibitive factor. It's like a Teflon. It's like emotional Teflon. They don't really stick to anybody. They don't really attach to anybody. They when it gets to be really, I would say, there becomes no boundaries for them at all for a narcissist, because what they do is they sort of just erase boundaries, erase barriers, and then next thing it's just them in the world, and they are on top of the world. But part of those, some people which are like, you're on top of the world, top of the morning to you, top of the day to you, top of the world to you, why, but the problem with a narcissist is it isn't a shared experience. They always want to make sure that there's a cliff, a precipice, a drop, where there's always something perilous going to happen, an engineered chaos that's going to fill up that gap, that is going to fill up, and there's always going to be a ledge.